Hey, welcome to the ChrissieCast live from the compound. Shall we spin the wheel, my friends? Ooh, that's tricky. It's landed half on the pals, which of course refers to people who are my actual friends, and the music makers, and that can only mean one thing. The luminous Clare Bowditch is an award-winning musician, author and actress, but I like to refer to her as a gold standard soother, listener, encourager and cupboard wiper. I'm just so thrilled that she is here because I love her. Welcome to the ChrissieCast, Clare Bowditch.
Well, gosh, it's a thrill to be here.
Finally.
What do you mean, cupboard wiper? Is that just a way of describing that I love you?
Yes. You came over to my house recently because I had made, like for the express reason, and it was clear, I'd made it very clear why you were coming over, apart from that I needed to see you. I'd made pumpkin scones from my grandmother's recipe, and there was one person that popped into my head that would enjoy them with me, and it was you. And you came over and we ate the pumpkin scones eventually. And then we talked and talked and talked, and the whole time you were washing down the front of my cupboards.
It actually sounds quite rude when you say that, but as a Dutch woman, this is just so normal to me. My mother and I, we always stood and talked and we did little bits and pieces, and, it was my fault there was pumpkin scone on the front of the cupboard because you showed me an incredible recipe. I never really considered.
No. It's a Queensland thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I loved watching you clean my cupboards, and I thought, that's another reason I think that we love each other is you might be like me in that you can't think unless you're doing something. So I have learnt that about myself, that I can't come up with anything unless I'm doing something else.
Yeah, I do really like to be I find my body likes to move and do, but this could also just be the fact that I am a mum of 3 and we run a small business and there's always been a lot to do. But if I really reflect back on childhood, I was always a bit of a busy person. I thought, what a wonderful world. Let's get into it. There was always something to do.
Yes. What sort of child were you?
I was brought up the youngest of 5. Oh, gosh, I get emotional thinking about it now. I've actually got a croak in my throat. No, I was the youngest of 5. We were all born 18 months apart. And I was really lucky. I'm often asked, did you come from a creative family? And on a traditional, judgment, perhaps no. My mum was a nurse, my dad worked in the law, but my parents were deeply loving and very creative people. And so I remember my childhood as actually a place of great fun. Mum was the kind of woman who should give you a can of paint and say, go on, off you go, paint the wall. Or we had lots of Brussels sprout fights or, and so on. But it was also really difficult.
Why was it difficult?
Because my sister died. Rowie, yeah. So she was 2 years older than me when she died. When I thought we'd just get into it. When she, I was 5 and she was 7, and my parents very fortunately had very strong faith, so they stayed together, held the family together. But Rowie had been sick for a long time, and we really missed her. And I think that made me and my siblings really close. But that's the truth of it. That was part of the waters that we grew up in.
When something catastrophic like that happens to a small child, how important is talking about it?
I don't know as a child that it was terrifically important to talk about it, but as an adult and someone who then became a parent myself, it's been really important because she's in the room with me and with us always. So to not talk about her, in beloved company, or to pretend that she wasn't there is just not possible for me. Her photos were always all over the house. We always spoke of her, and we still do. She was absolutely glorious. And
who did she look like?
Funny,
because I've seen your siblings, and and I've seen your parents, and I'm obsessed with genetics.
Yeah, when you're a kid and you have like Holly Hobby pillowcases or so on, right?
Yeah.
So in my childhood mind, she always looked like Holly Hobby. It's so funny. So she sort of, if I look back at the photos now, I see my mum, I see my dad, I see my brother, I see my sisters. But she really was her own unit, and she was kind of born that way. She was super bright, super husky, super bossy, and super kind. Yeah, but a really smart kid. And, I think a lot of a lot of who we are as a child remains who we are as adults. I find that more and more as I sort of head into this. I'm almost 50 now, Swanee.
Are you going to have 50th?
If you'll come, I will. But I've heard...
Come, I'll organise it for you.
Okay, done.
I'm good at that.
Should we go back to Europe like you did last time?
Oh, my God.
I'll tell you what, though, I've heard you say this, that we, you know, at every decade we feel like we're done. So at 30 we might feel like we're done. At 40 we might feel like we're done and over. At 50 we feel like we're done. And that the friendship that we have always reminds me to not fall to that story. Like, who is it who... You said yes to Big Brother 21 years ago.
I know.
On a crazy whim.
A crazy whim. And it
that
changed my life.
Everything.
Yeah.
So, as we move into 50, we keep saying yes and we bring the ones we love
We
with
do
us.
say yes. And you know what? I can sort of, you know, attribute that element of my, like, sort of life vibe to my dad.
Can you?
Yes, because I remember, I think it was on his 70th birthday or something. And I said to him, what can you tell me?
Yeah.
You're so far down the track. What can you tell me that you know for sure?
What a sweet daughter that you would ask that question. Good for you.
Well, he really thought about it too, which I appreciated. And he said, I reckon the most important thing I've learned is that if you ever hear yourself saying to yourself, oh, you're too old for that, you're not.
What great advice.
Yeah. And that has... Because we do say that to ourselves. Absolutely. Oh, no, you're too old for that. You can't do that. That horse has bolted. The horse has never bolted.
I couldn't agree more. I had the thrill recently of making this new work. It's about everyday creativity.
Yes, we are going to get onto that. It's an Audible course.
Audible original, yeah. But what it gave me was an opportunity to speak to my friends and my Brains Trust in a really different way.
Yeah.
To ask really direct questions like, do you consider yourself creative? If not, why not? What dreams do you still have left that you'd love to do if only you could or gave yourself permission?
Okay, let's backtrack for a second. I want to give a proper plug to this Audible original.
You're the first person I've spoken to about
I
it.
know.
So forgive me if I'm clumsy.
I know, because it's only...
years making it.
I know. It's only been available since the 1st of December. Go get it. If you think it's for you, it is for you. Like, as my dad says, if you're saying to yourself, oh, no, that's not for me, I can't do that, you can.
It's
right?
called Find Your Creative Courage. And it is, if you want it, it's there for you.
And creativity is, when I think of creativity, I think of you. You've become like a champion for the cause. And I think to use creative as an adjective about yourself sometimes feels... and I don't know if it's an Australian thing, feels up yourself.
Yeah, that's a really, really common misconception. We think it's for special people who do special things with special gifts.
Yeah.
And we fail to realise that we taught ourselves to walk, to talk, to think through this act of creativity, bringing two or more things together, smushing them, and then creating something new. That's what you did with your grandmother's scones. Like, if you think about it, sure, we're just making scones in the everyday, but you're bringing in a memory and love, and you're sharing that with me. That's in itself a worthy creative act. And the more of them we can get into our lives, the more meaningful it is.
What happens to us as children growing up and learning how to survive that creativity becomes not important?
It's sometimes more that we are shamed into playing small because of our adaptive responses. So we are pack animals. I'm someone who has researched this quite deeply because I've always sung. We sung normally and naturally in our family. No one was a professional singer, but we sang harmony. My mum was from Holland, you know, around the sink and at church and all the rest of it. And at birthdays, you know, someone always threw on a harmony. It wasn't beaten out of me, but as an adult who worked in music, I would so often meet strangers after shows who would talk to me about their relationship with their voice. They'd say, I can't sing. And I always found this curious because my training is that if you can speak, you can sing.
You can speak, you can sing. Okay. It's my mantra.
Correct. And I can't run like, you know, Usain Bolt, but I can run. You know, there's within our own capacity, we can all engage in this act. So I got curious and I found a lot of people had and this is just one particular story, but it's typical of what happens. They shared their voice at a certain stage, perhaps they were 4, 5, 6, 7, and they were shamed in some way, told to stand at the back, why don't you mime, be quiet, oh my God, who's that?
Or they shamed themselves.
Correct.
They're like, oh,
I'm not as good as that
I don't
person.
sound like Tina Arena. That means I can't do it.
God bless. None of us sound like Tina Arena.
No, she was a freak.
She was the one who was in Jane's and she made the song out of it, like she was the one who was Sorrento mooning. I mean, we can't be Tina, but that's a really great point. So to find our own unique longing and to have the courage to attempt that in our own everyday lives. What I say is it's fair enough you feel vulnerable. We're pack animals. We don't want to stand out from the crowd necessarily in a way that will bring us, vulnerability in an unsafe place.
Or potential ridicule. It's like, oh God.
Correct.
I'm 2 steps ahead here. I'm going to sing. It's going to sound average and people are going to think I'm shitty idiot.
Exactly. So why can we do it a shittiot? That's brilliant.
That's
did you make that up?
I just did that.
See, act of creativity. 2 words. That's a portmanteau you just made there. That's got a name. But this is about trying it in your home where it is safe and having a play with the notion that maybe you too are creative. Maybe you too can benefit from, really, there's extraordinary health benefits related to creativity. And it's all, the research is there now.
Tell us what they are.
Well, for example, cognitive decline in elderly people. It's so often, like my father had dementia. It was so hard to know how to connect back with him. But anyone who's ever been on TikTok, YouTube, or knows this from themselves, if I put on a song that was familiar to him to his childhood, all of a sudden he could sing, he could speak. And if you basically are scanning someone, if you're brain scanning someone while they're singing at that stage of decline, you see some really interesting things in the brain. So it's one of, in therapeutic settings, it can be really useful. We know at end-of-life care it's useful. We know that even when people are recovering from any sort of major trauma or change in their life, creativity can help us knit it back together. Even knitting itself is, I think it was a UCLA study around the health benefits of knitting. Don't quote me because I've spent 2 years researching this. And all the things we intuitively know about, I enjoy doing that and I feel good, and then we tell ourselves it's too small. I say do it anyway because you are doing yourself a real service.
Yes. I love to sing. And it's not about how it sounds. It's about how it makes me feel.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. And I can thank you for that because you've always been very sing, Swanee, sing. So on the back of that encouragement, I have a microphone at home set up, ready to go. And I'll just grab it. And it feels like whenever I do grab it, it feels like such an event and such a treat. Just for me. It feels like a treat.
These things are like companions and friends in our lives, and they're there for us in our hardest times as well as our most playful times.
Yeah.
Every single time you do a show and think a new thought, that too is an act of creativity. And there are people who say, look, I mean, the way I made this was in conjunction with the Brains Trust, so a crew of about 100 people who over the years I'd spoken to about creativity, or we'd worked on some stuff together, or they'd come to the workshops and so on. The point is that each of us have these different propensities. You have voice, I have voice. We have these different longings, but it's not even just about those, traditionally artistic things. It's really about bringing in newness and novelty and new thought, which can bring hope. So anytime you think, instead of, oh God, it's over for me, I'm 50, what if you throw in this little thing called a question there and ask, what if it's not?
What if it's not?
What if that's not true?
What if I can actually use all the amazing experiences and lessons and time I've spent getting to know myself up till now?
Yeah.
To do more things.
Well, you are a classic example of that. You call it your midlife crisis, but really, again, you recommend it to everyone. Why? Because
I really do, because once you have it, I mean, midlife crisis, I just don't know why we have to make everything so negative. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I do.
It's an awakening and an ownership and a falling in love with yourself properly where you are. That's what it is.
Correct. And because of our negativity bias, which is just part of our evolutionary inheritance, it's part of what keeps us safe. We need examples of people who are still making brave choices and surviving them. Not only surviving them, but thriving them. So I remember one summer a couple of years back when you would have said maybe you were in that period of time. I was having a real lull. You know, I was missing my mum. She'd passed away during COVID, and I didn't really want to. I couldn't really play the game. You know, I couldn't be around people that I had to tap dance for or pretend I wasn't feeling what I was feeling. And you're someone who I can be very honest with, and you showed up, and it was kind of like you brought, you know, some treat, but what you brought was yourself in this stage of exploration. You'd been walking, you've been finding treasures, and it lit a little spark in me. It was one of the things that helped me start turning around the story that, you know, that we all get when we are missing someone or in grief or when there's been too much change, which is that, gosh, what's the point? You know, what are we doing here? All the rest of it. Often we don't know. And the way we find out is to get walking, get into action, do something new, see how we feel. That's what I want to encourage people to do.
Yeah. Is that when you started your sourdough journey?
Oh
my God, it's like having a newborn baby.
So some context here. We had a conversation last week that picked up on, what was one of the grand obsessions of that deep, dark, quiet, the lockdown.
I loved it. Don't get me wrong.
And it was a friend to our sourdough. I mean, we have actually a scene with sourdough in this Audible original where the sourdough is still calling from the fridge.
I know. I'm sleeping. You can wake me up at any point once you Google what to do with me.
That's right. So we considered, you know, is it time to revive it? Now, I lived in Fitzroy North at the time, and there was, in fact, this is 2020, a deep desire to make our own bread and a deep shortage of sourdough starter. I mean, it had been spread thin throughout the neighbourhood. And I had the good fortune of coming across a recipe by Sylvia Colloqua. You know,
Sylvia.
Who in her book, she said you can start your own, you know, you just need sultanas and some water.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
what? Sourdough starter?
You can
as rare
start
as
your
hen's
own.
teeth.
I mean, it's wonderful to get that inherited one from Redbeard Bakery, as a friend of mine, Steve, has spoilt me with that deeper strain.
I'll have to get that for you. I'll have to get that from you.
I've got some for you. But it does make a bit of an ask. You know, there are sort of, you can just start with a yeasty bread and it doesn't ask you to feed it each day. Sourdough does ask you to feed it each day, or else put it in the fridge and remember that it's there. So I understand your hesitations.
I think it's interesting. Sourdough as a
gives a lot though.
as an element.
Yeah, tell me more.
I was like, why am I doing this? Because, like, why am I actually doing it? Because Philippa's, for example.
Wonderful bakery.
Illawarra Bakery.
Oh, yes.
There was no shortage of bread, right? I could get bread, even in lockdown. So I was like, why am I doing this? And I think for me, and tell me if you think this is mad.
I'm curious.
Likely it is.
Doubt it.
Because we saw so few people.
Yes.
And I get a lot personally from caring for other people and showing that care. I get that. I do that for myself, really. I think I got obsessed with sourdough because I wanted something new to look after.
I understand. And you won't be surprised really when you think about it. That is the perfect and a very natural and normal response in a time where everything was out of control and we actually needed small friends with I mean, sourdough, it is alive. That, you know, it is a fermented good. Anything can happen. So you had a random creative adventure. Anything could have happened with the sourdough. It seemed really small and silly in conversation, but a friend and neighbour of mine, Sharon Flynn, who has an organisation, a company now called The Fermentary, and they make my favourite bubbly drinks. So I came, you know, I really enjoyed this sauerkraut and so on that she made. But then, you know, she ended up being a neighbour and I got to have a really great chat with her, and she's written some beautiful books. She came to her what she calls really a deep and profound relationship with fermenting and with the process of it. and it sounds silly, but, you know, when you meet Sharon, you'll understand, like, she is fizzing with life and liveliness. She came to that at a really difficult time when she was in transition. She was in a foreign country. She really didn't, she was caring for her children and she really needed company. And she said, curiously, it was like having, you know, company there, really. And
See, that makes me feel better about my inkling that it wasn't about the bread.
Not necessarily. And it is, there are actually, again, all these health benefits that are really clear when it comes to gut health. And so there's something instinctive as well. You wanted to do something good, something you could control in a way, something that was collaborative.
And somewhere to be. I had alarms to feed, and it was like a real life Tamagotchi.
Jinx, make a wish, make a wish, make a wish.
I want to talk about your book.
Go on.
Because I find that, like, when was it released?
2019.
Right, 2019. That's 5 years ago. And the annoying thing with books is the people that are going to read it haven't read it yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think we need to talk about books more because they're permanent. They're in the world.
Yeah.
But a big song and dance is made when they're released, and then no one ever talks about it. But the important thing is still there.
Yes. Yeah.
I loved your book so much that there are a few things. By the way, it's called Your Own Kind of Girl.
Thanks, Funny.
And it's still available. If you haven't read it, you must. Like, you absolutely must. Very rarely I will start consuming someone else's creativity, whether it's a book or a movie or whatever, series. And when I know that it is matching my soul, I get so greedy about it. And then I have to recalibrate my consumption of that because it happens so rarely that I don't want to be greedy. I want it to last longer. And I was a sort of kid that, Easter Sunday I'd get my Easter eggs. They would be gone by Sunday lunchtime.
Oh, yeah.
I'd, go to the show, get my requisite 2 show bags. They'd be gone by the time the train pulled in afterwards.
I never understood how anyone could do anything else, though.
Yeah, but then I missed it. The next day I'd wake up and I go, what I wouldn't give for that raspberry sunny boy that I didn't really appreciate because it was coming in after 2 packets of Sandboy chips. So now I actively control my consumption of things that make me feel good because I want it to last longer.
The discipline.
I know.
Well done.
And with your book, after the first chapter, I went, right, okay, don't lose your mind, Swanee.
Did you really?
Yes.
And you know me quite well.
Yes.
Were you surprised? Did you feel yourself in the...
Yes, I felt myself in it.
Yeah.
And the way that you write is so like...
You are.
Oh, I just never wanted it to end.
You're lovely.
Please buy the book.
I've got to...
Are you writing another book?
Yeah, and I've this sometimes happens. I'm a little like you. I'm a little lush in some ways too. When I hit on like find your creative courage, transform your life using everyday creativity. It was just this sort of funny little title, sweet little title. I'll do something useful. It was 3 years ago that I pitched it to Audible off the back of doing an audiobook with them. Audiobook of that book that we mentioned. And my mum is one of the characters in the audiobook, meaning she does the swear warning, and she shares her apple tart recipe. But I thought it would be a small project that I know the content so well. I have this conversation with so many people about, hey, have you considered maybe you are creative? Why don't you try this? How's this for a random creative adventure? Or just, It took me down the most interesting and profoundly fascinating rabbit hole and connection with strangers and conversations and delight, and really trying to find a good argument for what I believe is the most sustainable, renewable, underrated, squandered, ever available, affordable power that each of us have within us, which is this power of a new thought, of creativity. That it overwhelmed the book that I was going to write. I overwrote, and I tell you where. So you asked, am I writing another book? Yeah, I've written a number of books since 2019's release. I am a little overwhelmed by which story to tell next? Which is the most useful? Which is the most present? And this is a really classic conundrum. And I think the trick is to just get it out there, whatever it is. But
what are the stories that we are going to get from Clare?
The books that I wrote during this time, and it was really, again, just out of 2020, was about small acts of pleasure for all kinds of weather. And this was, in a way, a kind of make and do book that told stories. And it was about how we can survive difficult things sometimes by bringing in a sense of play. So it was in line with the work that I'm doing now with Audible. But a part of me then had to grieve my mother and grieve changes in life, and grieve, look, just learn to
get
live.
used to it.
Yeah.
It's new.
So ways to live well without, these things that were so familiar in our lives and with change. So that became then a really big story too, this story of how do we live well. And for me, that was around many, many things. But there's another part that people just want me to tell the next part of the memoir. I only really wrote the first memoir up until the point of having my first daughter, Asher, and that's something I wanted to write too. So I think maybe we need to just put it, like, I know we all have our own sort of, tripwires or rabbit holes that we fall down, and I've fallen down one, and I actually need a bloody good talking to, actually.
Really?
Yeah. And I think if I were going to draw me in a champion, think of yourself, think of our mates, maybe Catherine Devaney, who's a wonderful encourager of writers. She has workshops called Gunners, I'm going to write and so on. But
I just ordered the
cards. I've got my
cards.
She's made these beautiful, prompt cards. So my problem is I've written far, far, far too much, and I need someone. Well, I need to tell myself to just put something out there.
I can see a
Get on with
funnel.
it.
I can see a funnel, and there's all these ideas, and it's blocked. The ideas are there.
What do you want to
Which
hear,
is coming
Swanee?
through?
Oh, I put her on the spot.
I want to hear all of it.
Yeah. So it's really frustrating when the very thing we know we should do, and I would advise another mate to do, which is just start with one.
Yes.
And move from there. I've got to this sort of crossroads with myself over it. But really, I think I wanted to end 2025 back out in the world. I've had a good sabbatical with making...
that's a year down the track.
Yeah,
the end of 2025.
Yeah,
no, that's good. I was just checking. Checking.
No, I didn't mean that. I meant 2024.
Oh, yeah.
Look, here's the truth. All my excuses are probably gone now. So last 10 years, I've been raising guinea pigs and children and doing other projects. And my boys are 6'7" and they've just finished year 12. My daughter's 21. I think you'll hear more from me next year is what I'm saying.
I think I will. And you've got to meet yourself where you are every single day, and you've got to accept that you don't know what that's going to be today. So you've got to be flexible.
Are you giving me advice now? Because I'm listening, because I was still worrying my mind. You got my full attention. Let's talk about this theoretically. So I'm someone who has lots of ideas, but am I not showing enough creative courage myself with these ideas? Like, what would you advise?
No, you've got too many.
I'm just overwhelmed.
Yeah, there's a traffic jam.
I really love making work that is useful. I so admire people who are ambitious about fame in their career and so on, within good reason. But I'm not really that. I don't think there's terrifically much value in fame or being known or sharing things with the world if they're not useful to someone, if they're not giving something back.
If it's not helpful, I agree.
In the loop. So
with your Audible series, we'll finish on this.
Thanks, babe.
Go to Audible and get it.
I think it's just free if you remember.
Amazing.
Go for it.
I'm going to suggest I would like a workbook to go with it.
Beautiful.
Because I achieve different things when I consume media in different ways. The listening is one thing, writing is another, and seeing is another. So if you could even if you just organise a workbook just for
it's
me.
Already written, babe.
That accompanies.
Yep.
That's the next thing.
Okay.
I look forward to getting it and talking to you again about that once it's released.
Cannot tell you how much I appreciate being a guest on this ChrissieCast business.
Please come back. There is so much more to discuss, Clare Bowditch. I love you.
Thanks for having me, friends.